A huge thank you to patron Robin Renee for suggesting today's video topic. If you want to suggest a topic for next Wednesday's Name Explain video, all you have to do is support Name Explain on Patreon for $1 a month. Find out more by visiting patreon.com/Name Explain, which will be linked down below. Anyway, idioms are phrases we use in language to express ideas or our thoughts in a more metaphorical way. In example, when you say you are over the moon, you're not literally leaping over Earth's satellite, you just mean you are very happy. The term has its ultimate origins with the Greek idios, meaning personal or private, as these terms would have been used amongst friends and family, before reaching wider use. English is now full to the brim with idioms many of us use on a regular basis. Something that pops up a lot in idioms are eggs. We all know what an egg is, right? Popular food source that can be prepared in a variety of ways, from fried to scrambled to poached and anything in between. They are also used as the incubation vessels for most non-mammalian creatures, but even some mammals lay them too. Even humans have eggs of sorts, with the egg cell that forms half of us in our inception. The reason I probably don't need to go into all that much detail about what exactly an egg is down to the fact that eggs are pretty much a universally understood concept in our life. More or less all of us understand the basic properties of an egg, from what they look like, feel like, and taste like. They have also taken on so much symbolic meaning too. Eggs are known for their fragility and preciousness, and they have to be gently handled. And they are also a symbol of birth and rebirth, hence the link they have with Easter. It's down to this universal understanding of eggs we more or less all have, as well as their symbolic meaning as to why eggs appear in so many idioms. Our near universal understanding of the properties of eggs has allowed us to play with those properties in a more metaphorical way and use them in many idioms. Take the pair of idioms of a good egg and a bad egg. These are terms that relate to the qualities of an egg in regards to how fresh, tasty and safe to consume it is as a food source. It can probably relate to the fertility of an egg too. In language we use the term of good and bad egg mostly in regards to fellow humans. Calling someone a bad egg is a very mild way of saying someone isn't particularly nice. Anyone who you think is mean or morally corrupt can be labelled as one. Good egg means the exact opposite, unsurprisingly. It's a term for people you deem to be nice and well-natured. Seemingly, these two terms were not formed in conjunction with one another. Bad egg seems to have come first, with it being from the mid-19th century. The term seems to have its origins with public school boys in England, and for a variety of weird reasons, public school actually means private school in the UK. It's a whole thing. It was they who were seemingly the ones who first coined it, and as so many people who went on to shape the UK came from public schooling, it's easy to understand why it would have been adopted by English speakers at large. Good egg came some years later in the early 20th century. A term that predates good and bad egg, however, is rotten egg. Calling someone a rotten egg is probably worse than calling them a bad egg, but it's used quite jovially at times too. The term dates from the 17th century. Then we have an idiom like egg on your face and its variations. This is an idiom which is used when someone has done something embarrassing. For example, if you thought someone was pregnant and asked when they're due and it turns out they weren't actually pregnant, then you could say you had egg all over your face. The term very rarely relates to actually having an egg on your face in any way, but the term did originate from a more literal sense. The concept is believed to come from the Middle Ages in the theatre. When actors or performers on a stage were deemed to be no good, the audience would let them know in all manner of ways, from booing to heckling to throwing gross food on the stage. Something that's often pelted at performers were eggs, especially rotten ones. If someone had a good enough shot, the egg could easily land on the poor performer's face, and I'm sure they would have felt pretty embarrassed about it. It's from this idea of humiliating a medieval actor with egg dripping down their faces as to where the modern idiom comes from. Despite the idea being so old, it seems the term is relatively new. The OED's earliest reference to the term is from just 1964. If it turns out I missed something super obvious and it's actually from way earlier, then I guess I'm the one with egg on my face. Also, for the record, if you're at a show and not enjoying it, don't throw eggs at people, don't even boo them, just sit there and appreciate what they're doing, or leave if you're really not enjoying it. Another egg-based idiom relating to a poor performance is the simple phrase of lay an egg. This is often used in sports and entertainment. For example, if a director made a really bad movie, you could say they laid an egg, or if a sports team did really bad, you could say they laid an egg. egg. We aren't too sure where exactly this one comes from, but it may derive from the whole bad/rotten egg idea of them being useless or no good. Another theory is that relates to the shape of an egg, looking a bit like a zero, and movies and sports teams that do bad often get a 0 from critics or on the scoreboard respectively. Some of the earliest evidence we have of the term is from a 1929 headline reading "Wall Street lays an egg" in relation to the stock market crash. The Wall Street crash happened for a variety of reasons, one of those being because the rampant speculation over the values of stocks, and then those values not coming to fruition. You could say that the crash happened because too many people put all their eggs in one basket. Yeah, I actually have no idea why the stock market crash happened. I was just looking for a good segue into our next idiom. Putting all your eggs in one basket means to put all your attention, time, energy and money into one specific thing without any backup plan or alternative options. In example, me. I really put all my eggs into this YouTube basket. I have no degree or other talents. Was this a bad idea from like 21-year-old Patrick? Maybe. Go support me on Patreon to prove me wrong. It's easy to understand why this idiom involves eggs. Eggs are known for their fragility and their ability to easily break. So if you're an egg farmer who made all their money from selling eggs, it would be pretty bad if you gathered all your stock in one basket only to have that basket break and all the eggs fall and smash to the ground, resulting in a huge loss of earnings. It's directly from this idea as to where the term comes from. The earliest evidence we have of this term comes from the 18th century. Someone who puts all their eggs in one basket, only for that basket to break, really ought to have a nest egg. Nest egg is a term we use for a sum of money that is being saved for the future for one reason or another. This once again relates to the metaphorical value we have placed on eggs as precious things to be protected. An egg sitting nicely in a nest that is to be protected at all costs is very much like important money that needs to be looked after. This term dates back as far as the late 17th century, so we've been comparing precious money to precious eggs for some time. So far, we've seen eggs used in a positive manner and a negative manner in our speech, but they can also be confusing too. This is when we say something is a bit of a chicken-egg situation. We say this when we can't figure out what exactly came first, especially when one thing is seemingly a product of another. An example would be something like workplace morale and productivity, and that might be the most boring business jargon nonsense I've ever said on this channel, but bear with me here. What I mean by this is that workplace morale could be up because of productivity, or productivity might be up because of workplace morale. It's hard to pinpoint. Of course, this concept relates to the initial question that's plagued people for so long. What came first, the chicken or the egg? This confuses people as a chicken comes from an egg, but you need a chicken to lay an egg in the first place. This is a question that has bothered humans for millennia. Even Aristotle mused on the matter. It's easy to understand why we would apply this philosophical question to other issues, and it become used in wider language. But if workplace morale is low, it can make your office quite an uncomfortable place to be in. It could almost feel like you are walking on eggshells. This idiom means to handle a situation in a tactful manner, especially with the aim to not upset anyone. A really silly example would be if you knew someone who really hated peanuts. The sight of them, smell of them, even the word itself, and you had to take them on a tour of a peanut factory. Guiding them through that tour without enraging them would be very much like walking on eggshells. This idiom relates to the fragile nature of eggshells, and if there were many dotted on the floor, how difficult it would be to navigate the area without breaking any of them. This term is a tad more recent, with evidence of it coming from the late 19th and early 20th century. But if you really don't care about upsetting someone, you could tell them to go suck an egg. This is an insult you can throw at people who are explaining something to you already know a lot about. Like if someone told me how to write a YouTube video about names, I could tell them to go suck an egg. I mean, I wouldn't because I actually have no idea what I'm doing, so a few tips might actually be helpful here. It derives from the longer term of tell your grandmother to suck an egg, and its presumed origins are wild. It comes from the 18th century in a time when dental care isn't quite what it is today. As old people's teeth would decay, it made it harder for them to eat protein-rich foods. A source of protein that was easy for them to digest, however, were raw eggs, and they were devoured via a pinhole in an egg, with the contents then sucked out. As grandmas tend to be elderly, it makes sense why they are referenced in this saying, as they would have expertise in this area. So if someone told an 18th century merchant how to properly display their goods, the merchant could say back to them, yeah, and you could tell your grandma to suck an egg, to illustrate that they knew what they were doing. Eventually this shortened to just suck an egg, and today it can be used as an insult in general, not just in relation to expertise. Luckily, old people today can enjoy all kinds of foods, such as omelettes, and, as they say, you can't make an omelette without breaking an egg. This idiom is used when you have to do some hard work to get an end result. This doesn't need too much explaining, right? It literally comes from the fact that you have to break eggs to produce a tasty omelette. It's another 18th century product and is seemingly of French origins, before making its way into English. This makes sense as omelette unto itself is a word of French origins too. I guess omelettes and eggs were used in this metaphor because they are so universally understood, like I talked about at the top of this video. The phrase could have been something like, you can't make a cinnamon roll without husking the bark of a cinnamon tree, but that isn't quite as catchy and cinnamon isn't as commonplace as eggs, especially in the past. This universal understanding of eggs is perhaps seen best in idiom form, with the phrase, as sure as eggs is eggs. This means that you're 100% certain about something, like as sure as you are that an egg is indeed an egg. This one once again comes from that universal knowledge of what an egg is. This term is seemingly more used in British English than other versions of the language. The final egg idiom I want to highlight actually has nothing to do with eggs, that being when we use the word as a verb in a phrase like egg on. To egg someone on means to goad them into doing something, normally something a tad silly, like a friend might egg on another friend to moon a passing bus or something. The phrase has nothing to do with eggs, but is instead a corruption of the Old Norse eggja, meaning to edge. This relates to the idea that when we egg someone on, we are edging them towards doing something silly. The thing I find odd about a lot of these idioms is that in most cases, they don't actually specify what kind of egg is being talked about. I imagine most people think of a chicken egg as they are the most commonly eaten kind of egg and have just kind of become the de facto egg in the human psyche. But next time I hear one of these idioms, I'm going to picture a different kind of egg in my mind. When someone says they are walking on eggshells, I'm going to imagine huge ostrich eggshells they are leaping over. Or when someone says they have to break an egg to make an omelette, I'm going to imagine some weird snake egg omelette. Or when someone tells me I have egg all over my face, I'm going to imagine being covered in caviar, which is either really tasty or really gross. I don't know. I've never tried the stuff.
Name Explain depends on viewers like yourself supporting the channel financially on Patreon, so a huge thank you to everyone who does. Donating just $1 a month helps the channel amazingly and gets you bonuses including ad-free videos, exclusive content, the power to request ideas to be made into actual Name Explain videos, and your name at the end of the video with all these awesome people. Visit patreon.com/NameExplain or click the link down below to find out how you too can support the channel. Thank you. Thanks for reaching the end of the video. Why not watch another and subscribe to keep up to date on all things Name Explain. You can find myself on Instagram where I'm NameExplainYT and join the Facebook group Friends of Name Explain to talk with myself and other name nerds. All that will be linked down below. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video and once again, thank you all so much.